Jane's sitting right there. He reserved a seat. And, well, I mean, I don't know if I want to sit here anymore.
This is divided by political affiliation, right?
I think it's friends of the right, friends of the enemy.
Yeah.
Probably.
I'm going to,
That's the
because that
enemy.
makes them more scary.
Order and chaos.
Welcome. I'm Peter Brown. I think I know everyone here, and if I haven't, I'm Peter Brown. As you probably know, this weekend I'm presenting a course of spiritual work that I present. And tonight will be a little introduction to what that's all about. In a way, it's a shame that there is so many spiritual teachings, so many spiritual traditions, because it really muddies the water in terms of what this is really about. Spirituality is very simple, and most spirituality is presented popularly, more or less grossly misses the mark in terms of presenting it, prioritizing what really matters and what it's really about, as opposed to dwelling around relative non-essentials or relative ephemeral issues. And the reason for this has to do with identification. I'm going to talk a lot about identification tonight. So the point of spirituality, the goal of spirituality, is what you are to recognize what it is in a radical and fundamental sense. No more, no less. That when that recognition occurs, it has been called realization, liberation, enlightenment, all sorts of various things. But it consists of just simply recognizing what this actually is, which implies, of course, that in conditions of relative normalcy, normal mindset, what you are has not recognized what it is and is in a condition of more or less heavy-handed misinterpretation of what this is, which turns out to be the sum total of all problems. So all spiritual problems consist of not recognizing what this actually is, what you actually are. And the sole spiritual solution consists of recognizing what this is, what you actually are. Now, one of the reasons that, well, the fundamental reason that spiritual traditions are so opaque and so impractical in terms of addressing this fundamental issue is that, by and large, spiritual traditions are addressed towards identified individuals, human individuals, people, you as a human being in your life, saddled with your problems, the whole gamut of human normalcy that we're all familiar with. None of which actually exists. It's all defined into existence by misinterpretation. And since most spiritual traditions are addressed to that non-existent individual, they're basically completely missing the point in terms of having an effective target, having an effective engagement with what it's really about. So basically what's going on here is there is actuality. Actuality is actual. Actuality is real. Actuality is what this is what you are, and here it is, it's right here, right now, and there's nothing else present. It's actuality, reality. Okay, that's not a very big surprise. Now it starts getting interesting. Actuality is engaged with itself. The nature of actuality is to be self-engaged. Actuality, you can think of actuality as being extremely narcissistic. Actuality is fascinated with what it is. God is fascinated with what God is. So reality is looking at itself saying, what's going on here? Now, what actuality presents as is largely what we might call experiential characteristics, which is the basic qualities that make up experience. What shows up for you as sound, as colors, as thoughts, as all of the actual substantial constituents of your experiential field is nothing other than these experiential characteristics that actuality is projecting itself as to itself. So actuality is looking at itself and it's seeing a field of apparent, let's call it what looks like what we call experience, that seems to be full of what we may be used to calling experiential characteristics. Now, these experiential characteristics can be seen as patterns, and the actuality is you can think of it as sentient, as perceiving. You can think of it as hyper-intelligent. And this inherent intelligence of actuality is looking at this field of experiential characteristics. And it sees patterns. It sees all sorts of patterns that seem to present, that these experiential characteristics seem to present as. So, of course, we're all very familiar with this. You look around, look at your visual field, and you see all this, you can very readily identify, oh, this is a human being, this is a flower, this is a table. Well, how does this happen? Because the intelligence, the inherent intelligence of your natural perceiving ability looks at the light and notices the light is in patterns, and it groups these patterns as kind of sets and says, oh, this group of characteristics I'm going to call a human individual, a human body. So this group of characteristics I'm going to call a piece of wood on the floor. This group of characteristics I'm going to call a flower. In terms of field of vision, it's all just light, right? I mean, the field of vision doesn't know that it's looking at a person or a flower. It's just seeing light, it's seeing color. But the inherent intelligence looks at these patterns and generates kind of classifications of these patterns. And sometimes these classifications are very provisional. Sometimes you see a flickering out of the corner of your eye and you don't know if it's something there or not, and then you look again and you recognize, and the intelligence looks at it and recognizes, oh, it's nothing there, it was light on a bird flying by the window, or whatever. Or you might look and there's someone standing here that I haven't seen before. But all of this recognition of seeming objects is nothing other than the inherent intelligence of the perceiving faculty looking at patternings within the experiential characteristics that show up. Now, suppose this faculty wasn't working very well. Suppose you weren't able to recognize patterning. Suppose you were extremely intoxicated, or half asleep, or delirious with fever. I don't know what, so that you couldn't recognize the patterns around you. You might still be experiencing experiential characteristics. You might still be experiencing color and sound and all that, but you might not be able to parse it in terms of clumps of what we may define as being objects, and so on and so forth. So to go back to the beginning, there is actuality that is here. And that's the whole story. There's actually nothing else than actuality. Actuality is engaged with itself. Actuality presents to itself as experiential characteristics. And these experiential characteristics are perceivable in terms of patternings, apparent patternings. Okay, so far so good. So far it's all just hypothetical, right? I mean, there's all of these lights and colors and sounds and sensations and whatever, and the intelligence is sort of grouping them into patterns provisionally, and so I've got all these patterns that are grouped, so what? So here's this experiential field where all these patterns are being grouped. Then the inherent intelligence, the perceiving intelligence, has the faculty of doing identification, which is another leap. It's a leap into abstraction, where it identifies the patterns as not just patterns of experiential characteristics occurring within its field, but as somehow objectively existing objects and objectively existing entities that it extrapolates or projects as various natures or various characteristics. And so it basically populates. It's rather like when you watch a movie, you go to a movie theater and you're watching a movie, all you're seeing is patterns of light on the screen, right? You're seeing shapes on the screen and hearing sounds, basically big pieces of paper, and the speakers are rattling. And that's the sound, and the light is just light shining from a projector onto a flat screen, right? But your perceiving intelligence looks at that and breaks it down. Oh, that shape might be someone running across a space, and that shape might be a vehicle they're running towards, and that shape might be, a rock, and that shape might be whatever. So you go from the presence of a field of light to a presence of hypothetical provisional patterns, and then the identification steps in. Where identification works, instead of it's just a hypothetical pattern, all of a sudden, oh my God, this is the hero, and he's in trouble, and the bad guys are after him. And so all of a sudden, you're basically populating, you're investing these patterns with a projected content, with a hypothetical value and this is done effortlessly by the perceiving intelligence. We're all very familiar with this mechanism. We experience it all the time. Of course, typically we may not be aware that we're doing it. We may just think that that's what it is. But all of this content that is apparently, that these various patterns within the experiential field are manifesting, is actually being put there by the perceiving intelligence. Very much like when you're getting all worked up about an exciting movie, when the heroes, and it's the cliffhanger, and there's a lot hanging on it, and the bad guys are closing in, and there's the hero, is he going to rescue the girl and live happily ever after or not? And oh no, and you're on the edge of your seat. It's just patterns of light on the screen. So where did the excitement come from? Where's the juice come from? It's all just imagination. It's all projection of imagination into these hypothetical patterns that aren't even really there. They aren't even patterns. They're sort of figures of different colors on a screen. I mean, like a TV set, suppose instead of a movie, you're looking at a TV show. A TV, if you look closely at the TV, it's these little pixels of color. And these pixels just sit there. They're not moving at all, and they're just flashing, changing color. And then you can look like, oh, this is someone walking across the room. There's a plane taking off. There's a bomb blowing up. No, it's none of that stuff. It's just little pixels just flashing like this. I don't know. But the intelligence skip over that, goes to interpreting these patterns of, oh, that's a person, that's a plane, and then goes even farther into identification, not just as that a person, but it's someone I care about. It's a sentient being. It's another me out there. So we started with the presence of actuality, and we end up with an experiential field that's populated by all sorts of entities and objects, each of which has apparently independent existence, each of which has a relative importance in various ways, each of which can be, a character or an object within an involved storyline or narrative that has some degree of importance and urgency and excitement hanging on it, And does that sound familiar? All of a sudden, here's your life. Here you are, you're in your life, you have your history, you have your acquaintances, you have your challenges, you have your problems, you have your aspirations, you have your many failings, you have your few successes. This is being dramatic. All of this elaborate, constituent, all this content that fills our life. And we are it. You are it. You are you, and you are in your life. And if anyone told you you weren't, weren't, you'd say, what, are you nuts? I wish. You know, where's the off switch? That's why I came to this damn meeting, you know? I'm stuck being me. I want to be an angel. I want to be Jesus Christ. I want to be, I don't know what, happy, successful, rich at least, you know, whatever. So you see the progression here. When you look at this, so when you look at this actuality that's here, along each of these stages of its development, of its apparent development, in terms of its content, it looks very, very different. It's a very, very different perspective of each of these levels, and yet they're all the same event. They're the same event that can be seen in different ways. And as we move closer and closer to the identified version that most of us are familiar with as, you know, consensus normal human reality, we're moving farther and farther into abstraction. We're moving farther and farther into imagination, imaginative projection. We're moving farther and farther into fantasy. And yet, in actual fact, most people take it completely the opposite. They would say, does actuality here looking at itself? What? That's like, you know, philosophy. Here I am in my life, and you're talking about actuality looking at itself. Well, where's this actuality looking at itself? And so human normalcy, human consensus reality, the normal human mindset that, you know, most of us, I assume, are very familiar with, is actually completely backwards in terms of recognizing abstraction from concrete actuality. What most people think of as most concrete is actually most abstract, most imaginary. And what most people might think of as most abstract is actually most concrete. So this is the nature of the phenomena that we're all familiar with, this actuality that is here. You know, it's just a quick sketch, and it's not literally true. It's just sort of a, you know, a rough outline of different headings and topics that people can look at it in terms of to kind of, you know, use as a basis for mulling it over. So, if the goal of spirituality is what you are, recognizing what it is, what that really means is the actuality that is here, which is what we really are, needs to recognize that it is looking at itself. It is looking at its own actuality. And all of these phenomena are just symptoms of that self-engagement. In realization, one discovers, I mean, you've all heard sort of poetic and cryptic mystical utterances of realized beings. It's all God, it's all me, it's all the self. Everything is the Atman. I mean, these are all, you know, elaborate ways of saying what I am, what this is alone here, is the only thing that's here. And it's looking at itself. You know, I mean, it sounds far-fetched. It's like, well, that's far out. God, these things are really true. You know, these Tibetans really have it going on. You know, what are they smoking? But that far-out condition is actually the simple, naked, mechanical, unadorned fact that's even completely obvious. And what most people are identified with as what they think would hold to be the simple fact is actually the really far out stuff. It's like, wow, I'm a person, I'm a human being, I'm in this body, I was born 64 years ago, the universe is X billion years old and takes up infinite X light years and all that. No. There's just this actuality right here, right now. It exists outside of space and time. Although what we think of as space and what we think of as time can be seen to, it can seem to present as that. You know, you're alone here. Well, you know you're alone here how many entities are perceiving your experience? Is there someone looking over your shoulder? You alone are seeing all of your experience. There's no one else there. You're alone. No one else is seeing your world. No one else is seeing your experience. And this you that is seeing your experience, is it you, your personality? Is it you, your historical self? Is it you, your body? Or is it just some miraculously present, constant perceiving faculty that is just here? Just actuality that, by its very nature, seems to be perceptive, seems to be sentient. I mean, what's your sentience? Your sentience isn't something, the consensus reality may be used to thinking of, well, my consciousness is a byproduct of, the neurobiochemistry of the brain, and, the neurons are firing and these electrotransmitters are engaging, and somehow there's this byproduct of that in our consciousness. It's like, really? Consciousness is just a simple present fact. And forms come and go. Consciousness doesn't come and go. The waking, you drift off to sleep and the waking world disappears utterly. It may as well never have existed as far as you know. But the consciousness hasn't gone anywhere. It's right here, right now, like it always is. And you start to dream, and all of a sudden, there's a new world, and new phenomena, and maybe a new body. I had a dream last night where I was 4 women. And I was very perplexed in the dream because I was wondering, how can I be all 4 of them? I happen to remember that. I mean, it's bizarre, but so, and here I am, and I don't seem to be 4 women anymore. How'd that happen? So was I 4 women and now am I imagining this, or am I this and was I imagining that, or am I imagining both of them? And both of these are just hypothetical interpretations of patterns that are appearing right here, right now in this sentence. The soul sentience, that is me. So anyway, this is a few perspectives that are relevant to all of this issue of spirituality, this issue of realization. So to go back to what I started talking about, the problem with most spiritual teachings is they are intended for individuals, they're intended for human beings, they're intended for personalities. They're geared towards poor suffering you in your life, which is an abstraction of an abstraction, and so it's pretty legless. It doesn't have a lot of actual traction and engagement with what's actually going on. Where spirituality is powerful, where spirituality is palpable, is in the earlier layers, in the perception of experiential characteristics, in the presence of actuality, which again, most spirituality doesn't talk to except in very abstract terms. You read Genesis, and the beginning is fine. You have God and you have let there be light. Okay, cool. That's the actuality, and that's the presence of experiential characteristics. So that's where the money is. That's what's interesting, right? But it's like, oh, you have to God, light, let there be light. What firmament, void, darkness on the face. What is this? Let me get on to the good stuff. Where's the good guys and the bad guys? So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit here. I'll blame it on the virus that I'm recovering from, rather than my own adult functionality. So effective spirituality has to be addressed to the portion of you which is most actual, which is not your persona, not your personality, not what you may be used to most identifying with, because these things are fantasies. These things are fiction. If you have someone, if you have a mentally deranged person who's in a mental institution and they're worried about being Napoleon or whatever, you don't go up to them and start helping them solve the problem, the Battle of Waterloo, because that's not where the real issue is. The real issue is not about the Battle of Waterloo. The real issue is they're not Napoleon. So you have to try and undercut it to get back to a deeper, a more prior actual level of what they really are, where it can be effective. Because Napoleon isn't going to do anyone any good. He's the end result of delusion. He doesn't have, the rubber's not meeting the road where Napoleon is. Unless you happen to be Napoleon, but there was only one of those. And we have a similar problem in spirituality. What your personality is trying to do, trying to solve the problems of your personality, trying to solve your emotional issues, trying to find equanimity, trying to, work with your emotions, work with your personality deficiencies. It's all completely irrelevant. Because you aren't actually any of those things anyway. That's just a big cop-out. That's just a big a dream. It's not a problem that it's a dream. There's nothing wrong with dreaming. It's not a problem that there's all of these phenomena of identification, all this phenomena of projection into these essentially non-individual patterns as if they were entities and as if they had stories. There's nothing wrong with going to a movie and getting all torqued up about the plot line, even though there's no plot line, there's nothing happening but on the screen. It's all good, it doesn't matter. But in terms of reality, in terms of recognition, in terms of what this is, what you are recognizing what it is, being with that level of the phenomena is not particularly powerful. Whereas the more radical you can get to what's going on, the more you can be with your experience as the miraculous presence of experiential characteristics appearing within actuality to itself. The more you can be with it like that, the more powerfully you can recognize that that is the case. And so only spirituality, which is working with that kind of a radical aspect of what this is liable to be effective. And of course, as is obvious, most spiritual teachings are not addressed on that level. So anyway, that's an overview of this whole thing that's going on here in sort of broad strokes. Some other aspects of this are that every sort of, I sort of painted this in terms of, the different sort of layers of, primal actuality to sort of levels of elaboration and levels of abstraction that it interprets its own presence as being. They're all equivalent. It's not like any of them are good and any of them are bad, any of them are right or any of them are wrong. They're all just different ways of seeing the same actuality. So it's it's all good. It doesn't matter. In practical terms, one can feel free to hang out anywhere one wants to within this spectrum of orienting to this phenomenon. It can be much more interesting and entertaining to hang out in some of the more elaborated aspects, and arguably more boring or less interesting to hang out in just presence all the time. And that's not a problem at all. But the point is not where you spend your time. The point is recognition, which is nothing more than that. It's just recognition. What you are is capable of recognizing itself, because it is that. The call it consciousness is capable of recognizing itself. In fact, it is always recognizing itself, but of course, again, it gets bollocked up with all the convoluted interpretations and gets distracted, sort of swept off into its own elaborations and ignores the root phenomenon, ignores where it's coming from. But the nice thing about realization is it just has to be, it has to occur, and once it occurs, the perspective is there. It's like having lucid in a dream. Once you know, you get that moment of lucidity. It's like, oh, I'm dreaming. This is all a dream. Then it's not like the dream has to end. Who cares? It's like, oh, it's a dream, so it doesn't matter. Screw it. I'm just, I'm going to go off and, do whatever I want to do because it's a dream. There's no repercussions, whether those are. And you got a big shooting grin in your mood, and just, oh, what fun. So it's not like you need to, like the moment of lucidity, let me stay with lucidity, let me just stop the dream. See? No, just recognize and then carry on. The point I'm getting at is this investigation, this recognition does not demand an investment, an abandonment of anything, or an investment in anything, or a rejection of anything. It's not like I need to, I'm not a human being, so I have to leave humanity. I'm not a person, so I have to leave personality. I'm just going to sit and stare at my navel. But you can do that. I would get bored after a while. So that's a really relevant implication of all of this. There's no lifestyle implications. There's no implications of needing to be with this one way or another. The point is to recognize it simply, and that's that. And as I say, this is doable because it is what it is, and what it is not actually hidden from itself, other than by its own complexity and its own infinity. This is another aspect that makes this all very lucid, is the nature of the experiential characteristics that present are literally infinite. The amount of information that's present in your, let's just take your visual field in any instant is there's no way you could possibly sum it all up, or get a handle on it, or even designate it all. It's too much information. It's an infinity of information. And every portion of the information is unresolvable. It makes it even more stupefying. When you try and pin down exactly what anything is, you discover it's not that anymore, because it's instantaneously becoming something else. It's continually morphing into units, what we call the flow of time, the flow of events. Whatever you experience in an instant, as you experience it, it's already gone. It's never going to come again. So, what was that? You can always be saying, what was that? And you never get an answer, because you'll never know. You can never put it down, because it's already gone. And even if you look very intently in the moment, you can't put it down, because it's like an irrational number. It's like trying to assume the value of pi. You say, well, pi is 3.14. No! 3.14 is pretty close to what pi is, but it's not pi. It's like, what color is this flower? Well, it's kind of pink. No! It's exactly that shade right there. And that shade right there, there's no other example of that shade right there anywhere in the whole space and time of my experience. And it's already gone. It's already become something else. As my perspective shifts, my angle of my vision shifts, my mood shifts, my blood chemistry shifts, whatever. So we have this extreme slipperiness and this extreme unresolvability of all the information that shows up as experiential characteristics, which is just confusing as hell. So here we are trying to get a handle on things. Got all this stuff here, and I'm trying to figure out what it all is, and the best I can do is be very heavy-handed with these approximations, and then I shore that up with denial of ignoring the fact that I'm doing heavy-handed approximations, and I pretend I have a clue and I know what everything is. Which again just sort of further transports one into abstraction. So it's a very strange situation that is occurring. It's a very strange condition that this is, which is why it seems to be so difficult for this recognition to occur. Bona fide realized people, bona fide enlightened people, seem to be in the minority. Why should that be? This isn't actually hidden from itself. This is what it is, plain out front, naked to see. It's like, yeah, this is it. But so why is it so hard to recognize? Because it's so slippery, it's so dumbfoundingly, complex and nuanced, and then you get distracted by all your own abstractions and your own storyline and your own, worrying about, money and success and relationships and your own personal demons and God knows what else, So you're caught up in all of this maelstrom of whatever, and it's distracting as hell, it's confusing as hell. So the very nature of this is to present as confusion, which is, of course, confusing, unexpected. If it was just a nice, clear, simple simplicity that was just sitting here elegantly poised, But it's not. It looks like this. It looks like life. It looks like the universe. It looks like, the human situation. It looks like this absurd talk. It looks like everything, And yet, it is absolutely no more than this presence that is here, that you are, looking at yourself. We're very familiar with this condition from dreams. Dreams seem to be this whole elaborate universe, and you're in them and you're caught up and you're in all these bizarre situations and whatever. And then on those odd moments when you're lucid or you wake up at the halfway through and you go, oh, I'm dreaming. All of a sudden it makes sense. It's like, I'm just sitting here looking at my own consciousness, and this is the way I'm reading it back to me. There's no one here but me looking at myself. That's all a dream is, right? I mean, it's just you dreaming. It's not like there's anything there that's like reaching in and shoving stuff in your mind or anything. It's just you looking at yourself, and the nature of your consciousness is so creative. It's so ingenious. Wow, it just is off and running into all of these amazing elaborations and all that. And even when it's doing that, nothing's happening. It's a non-event. There's nothing there because it's just a projection, basically in fantasy. And it's just you looking at yourself as the only actual event. But you get distracted from that fact and caught up in all of the apparent events, the apparent, excitement, content. There's no content there at all. You're making it all up. There's zero content. The content is you. Me. I'm dreaming. I'm asleep. That's what's here. So where did all this other stuff come from? Where did all this stuff come from? Same thing. There's nothing here but you. Not that this is a dream in a literal sense, like you're in some bed somewhere dreaming, and this is a dream you're having. And yet, in terms of the nature, the mechanics, the structure of the event, it's exactly the same. There's nothing actually here, believe it or not, there's nothing actually here, literally, physically, than you looking at yourself. This miraculously present, disembodied consciousness looking at itself. And yet it looks like this. Who can believe it? It's so detailed, it's so interesting, so nuanced, it's so bizarre. You know, it couldn't be this bizarre. It couldn't be this detailed and not be really here. Well, it is really here, but it's just you looking at this stuff. And that is, that concludes my presentation. Such as it is.
Well, can I ask a
Please.
question? But it's not chaos either. There's some patterns to it, and that's in fact what we recognize and presumably project to some extent.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's just this chaos of.
No, it's funny. It would be nice if it was in a way, because it would be less confusing. And if it was just sort of snow, you know, which you couldn't really parse into entities or situations or a narrative, I mean, at least all of that would be off the table. It would just be.
Well, that's sort of like, and then God created, you know.
Yeah.
You know, that's almost like patterns
is.
of recognition and stuff.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? You know, the nature, you know, the fact that the snow tends to appear as, or tends to be perceivable as patterns, and then the fact that the perceiving intelligence has the capacity to isolate these patterns and group them into sets, you know. In actuality, the photons are not sets, you know. The photon that's coming from your jacket, that one right there, and the photon that's coming from that light on the roof over there, that one right there, are just photons. It's just like flashes of light. They don't know they're you or the light. It's the perceiving intelligence that sort of draws a hypothetical outline. No, if it's there, if it's within that outline, then it's you. If it's not, then it's something else. And then, but if it's within that outline, it's the door on the back far wall. And if it's within that outline, it's the door. But all of that is projected by the perceiving intelligence onto the raw information, which, granted, shows up as if it was intensely patterned. But the funny thing about patterns is, if you look very closely at them, they're actually unpatterned. They're actually fractal. There's so much information within a pattern that it actually ends up being incoherent. And yet that doesn't stop us from claiming they're coherent. If, for example, I'm looking at a door on the wall back there into a closet, or I don't know what it's into. You know, it's a brown rectangle with, you know, 8 rectangle panels cut into it. But there is so, you know, every single shade, and I can say it's a brown door, right? Like how dull. And yet there's a bazillion shades of brown that I'm perceiving, different highlights and different this and different that. And so the amount of information that's there, just within that particular pattern, is literally infinite. And I mean, it's like patterns are infinitely subdivided. You know, there's that door, but there's the 8 panels, each of which is individual. And there's the top of the top left panel and the bottom of the top left panel and the left side. So there's 8 more. Like, in other words, how many portions of any pattern can you designate, which by that designation they become a subpattern. Okay. This is one body. This is 2 arms and 2 legs. All of a sudden, wow, there's 4 more things there. This is, you know, 10 fingers and 10 toes. Wow, all of a sudden, it's like, is it one body or is it, you know, 20 digits? You know, or is it, you know, X billion molecules? Well, yeah, it is. It's any of those. Those are all just different ways of slicing and dicing, hypothetically, by the perceiving abstraction and intelligence, the information that's there. Is there a limit to how much can be cut?
It doesn't seem.
That's the point. So how much is this body an entity if it's made up of literally infinite sub-entities, and if it is a sub-entity and literally infinite other, you know, hyper-entities? You know, this body was but one element in the human race. The human race is but one element in the solar system. The solar system is one element in the galaxy. It's like, so there's this one pattern of galaxy. It's just one thing, it's just a galaxy that's sitting there, right? What happened to my fingers? What happened to the molecules? What happened to the quarks in that particular atom? you know, in that particular molecule, in that particular finger. You know, these entities, these patterns, are created by the observing intelligence. Now, granted, it seems to show up with adequate raw material. I mean, this is the amazing condition. There are these, you know, virtually fractal, apparent, you know, patterns just waiting for the intelligence to connect the dots. You know, it's effortless to, you know, it's a no-brainer for, you know, a moderately or even not very intelligent human being to walk into an environment and be able to instantly parse all kinds of objects, right? And yet, you know, they aren't really there. They are just, you know, aspects of the patterning itself.
And this consensus reality would seem, and this is a bit of a projection, but it would seem to be, you know, well, by the definition, it's consensus reality, so others would agree with it. The dog would even abide by it, you know.
Well, we can pretend it would. Part of the consensus reality is it is consensus reality. So we can agree that we agree.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden we create consensus reality. I see the world, you said you see the world, so we see the world. And all of a sudden there's reality. But just because we're using the world, the same words, I'm saying I see the world, and you're saying you see the world,
Yeah.
we're throwing the same words back and forth at each other. We're talking about the same thing. I mean, consensus reality is very, very, very tenuous when you begin to look at it.
Yeah.
You know, it exists because it's not examined. It exists as a thing. It exists as a pseudo-coherence because it's not examined. You start examining it, and all of a sudden, you don't live in the same world I do. You don't think what I think. You don't like what I like. You know, we would probably disagree about everything if we really got down to nitpicking. So what world do you live in? Not my world, you know. So where's the consensus go? You know, which is not the point, really. The point isn't whether or not there's consensus reality. The point is that that level of analysis is so abstract from the raw phenomena, so abstract from the actuality. And the actuality of reality is the presence of your experiential field. Okay? When you were born, before you were born, the world did not exist. When you were born, the world did not exist. It was just, wow! And you were intensely indoctrinated over a period of many years that the world existed. And by the time you're 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever, all of a sudden, this is the world. Of course, the world's right here. A little baby, you know, a newborn doesn't say, there's the world. The newborn doesn't see the world. The newborn just, wow, here I am. It's me. It's this experiential field that is me. And you never stop being that. You still are that experiential field that you were, you know, when you were 1 second old, or before you were born, whatever. You know. And yet it's overlaid with all of these skillfully executed conceptual abstractions and leaps and analyses, which exist only in your imagination.
And it sounds like what we're talking about here then is basically just going back to that originality, you know, that pre-conscious in a way we normally think about it.
Sure. Jesus Christ was supposed to have said, unless you become a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And that refers pretty precisely to what we're talking about.
But once you have all these patterns at your fingertips,
Yeah.
you know, to let them go.
But you don't even need to let them go. You just need to see what they are.
Just recognize that they are.
They're abstractions. They're cool.
There must be some opening, some depth, some deeper value as you start to see this more regularly.
But you never stop seeing it. Typically, we just stop valuing it.
I guess
we're not interested.
Maybe we say we're less encumbered by the abstractions.
But when you recognize, when you remind yourself that they are abstractions, then you're less worried about them. They have less juice.
Yeah.
Because you realize how arbitrary they are.
Yeah.
You know, they're really defined into existence in your imagination, literally.
And whatever tendency you have towards insanity, it's one step closer to sanity as you recognize it.
Well, not recognizing an abstraction as abstraction, I would say, is insanity.
Yeah.
So human normalcy is a condition of complete insanity. You know, normal consensus reality functioning is a condition of complete insanity. And what we're talking about here is a return to sanity, a return to recognizing the actual perspective that is actually permanent, that's it.
But not being hung up about it, allowing ourselves to
Yeah.
go insane whenever we feel.
Well, because there's no hung up now, because the insanity doesn't actually add or subtract anything from the root condition. There's nothing wrong with abstracting. It's like playing a game. It's like, you shouldn't play Monopoly. So play Monopoly, who gives a shit? But it's just a game, it's a pretense. You know, so be a human being, you know, so get involved with your life, so run for Congress, whatever. You know, try and make money, try and succeed, try and fail. It's all good, but you're just playing games. It's like when you're playing Monopoly, unless you're really nuts, you don't get too worked up about whether you're winning or losing. You know, because you know it's a game. And you get up from the board. And this is just a game, you get up from the board. You go to sleep and you come back, where'd the game go? You know, you die and bang, where'd the game go? You know, so you're always getting up from the board. But we, you know, it's possible to not remember that, to think it really matters. And that's what all the complaint is, that's what all the suffering is, that's what all the spiritual dissatisfaction is. I need wholeness, I need peace. You know, I need release. From what? Release from what? From being? Being's the only thing you have. All the rest is just pretend.
But don't you think so often people, they recognize that, I'm speaking for myself, I recognize the box that I put myself in. The patterns that I just am compelled to go back to over and over again. And recognize that that's not healthy or good or anything like it.
Sure, there's all of that, but it's not that you need to not go back to them. Even going back to them doesn't matter. They're just abstractions. So what difference does it make? I mean, if it does matter to you and you have some latitude to manipulate it, that's great. I mean, if you're indulging in, for example, self-destructive behavior, and you wish to learn, and you have some latitude to work with that, by all means have at it. It's all good. But it doesn't. But you're not actually gaining or losing anything by doing that. You're just navigating within your abstraction. The actual event doesn't gain or lose anything. Your being, the presence, the actuality that is here, doesn't gain or lose anything from that. It doesn't gain or lose anything from your functionality or dysfunctionality, from your success or your failure. That's all a game level phenomenon, you might say. You know, like when you're playing Monopoly, you don't gain anything when you pass go and collect $200. You don't lose anything when you land on Park Place and you owe $1 million. Because it's just a game. You still owe the money if you're playing the game. Or you can storm off in a hug. You know, and so, my business has failed and I've lost all my money and I have to move out of my house. Okay, so it's like, then you're on Park Place. So your being this doesn't change. You don't gain or lose anything. I've lost beingness. My experience is not as present. Really? It doesn't work like that. What you actually are is inviolable. The presence of the experiential field cannot gain or lose, cannot be impacted. Everything that happens within the experiential field and does not impact the experiential field. When a bomb goes off in a movie, the screen is not burned. Mm-hmm. When a flood happens in a movie, the screen is not wet, because we get wet. You know, when human beings succeed or fail or have health or sickness, beingness doesn't get changed whatsoever. All of those are phenomena that are interpreted as being something, appearing within beingness, within actuality. And beingness is not some abstraction. Beingness is this that is here, this presence, this actuality. This is actual, no? I mean, you feel this, you feel the presence of your experiential field. That's it. That's where the money is. That's the Big Bang. I mean, that's where all the whoopee is. It's just that this isness, this presence that is here. That's what all the fuss is about. You know, religion, God, the Atman, all that refers just to this presence that is here, that is just a given. I mean, you already are that. That's a duh. Everything that happens in that is what we as human beings get all torqued up about. And that's all just from a projected imaginary identification, basically. So anyway, this is just an introductory topic. That's what I'm going to be working with this week. Is there anyone here who's not coming this weekend, or anyone here who is coming this weekend?
Unfortunately, I can't make it.
Well, we've gotten the whole thing. The nice thing about all this stuff is it's very, very, very simple. I mean, I do all these talks, and I do retreats, and I do this, and I'm talking about this and that, and I talk about all kinds of things, and I never really repeat myself, and everyone's different, but I'm always saying exactly the same thing. And after about 5 minutes, I've said it all. All the rest is just elaboration and looking at this aspect and that aspect and this ramification and that ramification. But it always just gets back to the basic fact. The powerful fact is the simple basic fact of presence. This is present. This is real. This is actual. This actual. And actuality is, of course, not an abstraction. It's a simple, concrete fact. This actuality. This is actual. This is here. This is real. It's palpable. It's felt. You can't define it. You can't argue it. It's a no-brainer. Duh. Yeah. This is present. Yeah. And that's the whole shooting match right there. That presence is the powerful fact. Just this presence, that this is here. You are here. You know, like you're in the mall and you're looking at one of those maps, you are here. That's the powerful fact. You are here. And it's not something that someone can give you or take away from you, or demonstrate or define or refute. Right? It's completely given.
So the only thing that's changing, to use your terminology, is the radiance. You know?
Yeah.
Radiance is this constant change and patterning on. The presence is that, boom, that's it.
Yeah.
Presence is just
Yeah, by analogy, if you think of the presence as being like a movie screen, the radiance is like the never-ending bombardment of light. Or in this case, it's never-ending spontaneous effulgence of light, since there's no projector that we can find. Mm-hmm. And then all the rest of it is just free association, blinded by the light.
Well, it's funny because, you know, there's no way to really characterize this. If you're saying, I'm going to a talk, you say, on spirituality, just because you don't, it's like, how in the world else can you express anything, you know?
Well, you know, this information is not very often directly available, you know, because again, as I started talking about tonight, you know, so much of spirituality is sort of farther down, even if it's resting theoretically on the cornerstone of the basic fact, most of it, you know, and by most I mean 95, 98 plus% is way downstream in terms of the aspects that they're addressing. Because by and large they're concerned with, you know, meeting the needs of their flock and, you know, and reaching out to, you know, to bring in new converts.
Yeah.
Keep the coffers full. But which of course is not really what it's about. But I for one think it's unfortunate that that's the case. I think it's an unfortunate condition. To me, this is very logical and simple and even completely obvious once you like, sit and look at it for 5 minutes and think about it. Oh, duh. So why not, have this kind of thing just, really obviously widely available to talk about? But by and large, people, are really interested in their soap operas. Because again, consensus reality, the perverseness of the nature of consensus reality and the sort of degenerated human persona and human psychology that follows from that whole, mess is, it turns everything upside down. It takes the simple, obvious, explicit actuality and makes it into this incredible abstraction. Like reality, that's the most abstract thing, reality. That's like for philosophers to talk about. But what's real is, me and my pain and my suffering and my aspiration and my friends and my family, and my country. All of which are like hopeless abstractions. But no, they're real. Reality is an abstract. It's like, how does that happen? How perverse is human nature that it can take this scale of things and can turn it, pretty precisely 180 degrees around. And make what's most concrete, the most explicit, the most abstract. God is that real. God is subtle and abstract. God's the most obvious thing in the world. God is just His presence, this actuality that is.
It's kind of like this. If greater importance is tomorrow, I can sell you a journey.
Exactly, of course. You can't sell this. You don't need to sell it because it's already given. It's already a done deal. Which makes it really, right away, people are like, hey, how am I going to make a buck on this? Oh, no, we can talk about it. Inside scoop on spirituality. Only $50. Signed first edition. Included. But I mean, the bizarre, it turns out, and wonderful fact is that there's nothing to be attained, there's nothing to be gained, there's nothing even to be figured out. Just notice what is already the case. Notice what cannot be made to be not the case. There's nothing to be cleaned up, nothing to be purified, nothing to be escaped, nothing to be attained. Just like look around and like, oh, duh. Which is, it's convenient and lovely and how nice. It's so nice that reality is perfection, it is liberation. It would be a pain if a lot of the other more complex philosophies happen to be true, and one had to, purify this and transcend that and eliminate the other in order to get in the head. And then you're free to do all that too. You're free to transcend anything you want, and purify anything you want, and save the whales, and stop eating meat. And all that. It's like, how about it? Who cares? It's all good.
Yeah, because it seems like I'm not quite ready to just abandon things like values and
Yeah, but there's no abandonment
hierarchies
required.
of needs and all that.
But it's not a matter of abandoning. It's not either or. You just see what it is. You see what values are. Where values come from. Values are the sincere, natural expression of your own intelligence being artfully with the patterning of your own energy.
Yes.
Which is spontaneously arising out of what you are. The experiential characteristics are appearing out of what you are. The intelligence that analyzes them into patterns is appearing out of what you are. So it never departs from you. You've never left home base. It's all you, being the ramifications of what you are. And the ramifications seem to develop into all of these elaborations and abstractions and all of that. But in doing so, it hasn't never gone anywhere. It hasn't left home base. That's just the implications in the offshoot of what you are. So it's all good.
But it seems like there's some coherence when you find these truths, as you go in life.
It's strangely there is, yes, strangely there seems to be a nature. There seems to be, a kind of a karma, a soul, who knows what, where your you-ness permeates every aspect of your functioning. And we all experience this, our life and the details of our lives is an offshoot of what we are, what we feel ourselves to be, and the things we grapple with and the things we're indecisive about, and all that are the fine points of the complexities and incoherence of our own nature. The fact that we are complex, we seem to be complex flavors that aren't necessarily simple and obviously coherent. We can appear to have apparent contradiction and apparent, multiple implication in the nature of what we are, which can lead to all sorts of, ramifications of complexity and perplexity. But still, we never left home base. It's all just the implications of the giving of what it is, of your units, of you. It's all you. So, in one sense, it's a very noble undertaking. It's exciting and noble to explore the ramifications of what you are that shows up as the complexities of in terms of event, with the issues that you grapple with, and so on and so forth. You're intimately being with your own nature and exploring that and honoring it in a way. Celebrating it. It's like great art is turbulent. A great opera or a great movie or a great, painting it typically has, it's unsettling and unsettled and complex and not necessarily perfectly symmetrical and there's beauty in that, there's elegance in that, there's joyfulness in that.
What's interesting that when you meditate, when a lot of people meditate, they put on the most soothing kind of thing they could, if you want to listen to something, it's going to be soothing, you go into a quiet background and it's not at all turbulent. But it seems to me that turbulence might be just as good. You could be at an amusement park and just sort of sit back and take it all in. That would be sort of a...
Rock concert's a great place to meditate.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that coin, when you do go into your peaceful space and you let your single candle and you have the nice incense and the soothing sounds and all that, you sit and you meditate, and what happens? Also, the turbulence shows up anyway, right? Like, surprise! Good luck trying to pretend that. Where's your peace now? And meditators, advanced meditators, discover this. Meditation is not, an elimination of complexity. It's not an elimination of turbulence. On the contrary, it's an integration with that. You find peace not by eliminating turbulence, but by integrating with it sophisticatedly enough that it no longer is held to be a problem. So turbulence isn't turbulence. It's just turbulence. Turbulence is not a war. It's not one side needs to win or lose. It's just the nature. But the very nature of the radiance is turbulent. The very nature of patterning is turbulent. We see it, and we see it in all phenomena. We see it in the ongoing, just evolution of circumstance. The fantasy of achieving some perfect state where everything's in balance and everything's in peace and everything, everyone's happy and the sun is shining. The little lambs are dancing. What? Really? I mean, it's infantile, it's childish, it's a kindergarten fantasy. You know, it's a lullaby for little children to try and soothe them to sleep. It's manipulative. It's not reality. Reality isn't like that. Reality is just weird shit leading to weird shit leading to weird shit. You know, it's continually, exponentially ramified. I mean, look at the universe. You know, the universe isn't some nice, simple mandala, symmetrical universe. Jesus. Galaxies are exploding and slamming into each other, and black holes, and what a mess. And yet this is actually this is reality. It's beautiful. It's pure beauty. It's pure joy. It's pure ecstasy. But it's a mature, sophisticated ecstasy that can handle and assimilate and appreciate any condition of energy and juxtaposition. It doesn't have an infantile need for it to be simply needed. Put it away. I mean, maturing in any sense. I mean, I think from even in consensus reality, most sophisticated people's point of view, maturing is the ability to assimilate asymmetry, to assimilate complexity, to appreciate exotic cuisine and weird flavors and bizarre situations, and not have it set off the tilt light. We can be with things for what they are, and that's cool. So the logical extreme of that is to be able to be with any energy condition and any degree of turbulence or asymmetry, and it's beautiful. It's reality. Yeah. And theoretically, even or philosophically, it has to be. Reality is made of the energy of reality and does not depart from the energy of reality. And so if that has to be the canon of beauty. So what's beautiful is reality, is the energy of reality, is any situation or ramification of that energy that can seem to appear. I mean, we're human consensus reality, we're notorious for taking sides. Health is better than sickness. Life is better than death. Peace is better than war. Reality doesn't think so. All life forms are busy eating other life forms and destroying other life forms, and ecosystems are infringing on and destroying other ecosystems, and planets are smashing into other planets. And
that's where prayer comes in, right?
Yeah.
Get it all straight.
Oh, that's going to straighten it all out. Yeah. It's just a delay factor.
Yeah.
Buddha was here 2,500 years ago or whatever, and it's just a slight time delay. Just because Buddha appeared, it's like all of a sudden everything's been straightened out, but there's kind of a time lag.
Well, those the
Have you
credit.
caught up with it yet?
It tilts in their favor and tilts against the others. Yeah. That's the equilibrium.
That kind of attachment to a reference point seems to be softening. As that's what I enjoy about this kind of like mental massage. It goes, if I'm really worked up by something, I had a position.
Yeah, sure.
To where it's like, oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Even when I have a position, look at that.
Because these reference points are basically defined into existence by the inherent intelligence, which is the faculty that analyzes the pattern. So it interprets this pattern as this, and that pattern is that, and this pattern is this. No, if that interpretation is correct, then these patterns are in some degree of conflict, and blah 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 blah. So so the extrapolation of that is maybe I should take sides, or maybe this, or maybe that. But all of that is abstractions, kind of argued into existence. The actuality is just the actuality. And so when one settles more and more into one's own actuality, the need to take sides in these abstracted, divergent positions is absurd. That's like, are you for the Seahawks or the 49ers? They're going to play a game, one team's going to win, isn't that interesting? What's this for? What's this for mean? Shit happens, which leads to more shit happening. Where's the issue? You don't need to take sides, this is, all of this stuff is abstracted into existence, so how important can it be? It's arbitrary.
So would you say that that's kind of like what magic is? Is just the ability to kind of see that this is a really fully functioning, hyper-intelligent ecosystem? Apparitional one at that?
Well, that's one aspect of magic. I mean, magic as it's understood sophisticatedly often is takes advantage of the fact that there's many different ways to parse the same reality. So in other words, you can hold if you have a real phenomenon, and you can spin doctor it as being this, or spin doctor it as being that, or spin doctor it as being the other, and the ability to manipulate between the spin doctorings, between these abstractions, is what magic takes advantage of.
So would you say that yoga is kind of like a toggling back and forth, it seems like to me, between like kind of the magician and the fool, like you have no idea what's going on, but you can play in that, in your frameworks in some?
Sure. The more clearly you understand the arbitrariness of these frameworks, the more latitude you have to play in them, so to speak, to the degree that you have artfulness or facility to do so. Yeah, of course. You gain freedom from being stuck in a perspective and a point of view. The more you understand that it's an arbitrary perspective, and that the actual phenomenon is not limited to actually being that perspective. You can have other perspectives on the same thing, or maybe even no perspective.
So there does appear to be some kind of freedom in I don't know, that sounds like a person thing. Like a person would have to move though, like,
No, because what has perspectives is transcendent reality itself.
Right. So that's what's doing the movement of the perspectives as well, though.
That's what's doing everything.
Right.
Even when it's lost in delusion and thinks and identified with a really locked-in interpretive framework of perspective, reality is doing that. So even when reality is doing that, it's not actually lost in or stuck in that. It's only sort of pretending to be. It may even believe that it is, but it has the freedom to not believe that it is because it isn't really. And magic takes advantage of that. Magic exploits that freedom of navigability of perspectives, basically, in terms of what magic really is. And obviously there's a lot of different ways to understand
Yeah,
that.
I guess well, what is navigating?
Yeah. Well, all of it. I mean, what is any one of these aspects? The whole question is what is this, what is that, what is it? And each one of those becomes a fulcrum for a really profound investigation. What is navigating? What is a frame of reference? What is a perspective? What is an interpretation?
It's seeing the geometry of how things kind of come together.
Yeah. And there's infinite room for artfulness in being able to be with that subtly and profoundly. And the more subtly and profoundly and artful that one is with that, again, the more freedom one has and the more one can potentially, arguably, take advantage of that freedom and navigate it, exploit it. Become a magician, so to speak.
Or at least feel that way. Well, and even just that feeling is kind of a...
For sure. I mean, and that's another interesting question. What's the difference between feeling that way or being that way?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if there is.
Yeah, it's a nice comment. Not that there's an answer, but it's a fruitful vector of inquiry, maybe, right? In a very profound sense, all of this is about artfulness and sophistication at being with the actuality of your own being, of your own presence, of your own experience, of your own energy field, if you will. And the degree of artfulness and subtlety that you can discover is the degree to which you can take advantage of that artfulness and subtlety, and again discover freedom, discover expanded possibility, and discover joy and liberation and realization. Because realization itself, you recognizing what you are, is just the ultimate artfulness. Or the ultimate extreme of artfulness, and then all other artfulness is the same thing.
It's funny, what popped in my head was that it seemed like I had this kind of craving for art all the time, seemingly, if I could report on anything, and the craving for outside art, like some kind of artistic expression that's not already occurring, that seems to just have gone away.
Sure.
Because it's like silly. It's like, this is so artful inherently.
Yeah, it's looking for a gross exemplification, so kind of idolification of what is already the case in him.
It's kind of seems like it's looking for a magic show, which is funny because this is a really profound magic show.
This is the magic show.
Yeah.
I mean, religion is the same thing. You want to put your sacred objects on the altar and have your sacred, activities and your sacred display, whatever. And all of that ritualization and objectification is just of what is already the case. This is the sacred object. This is the sacred activity. These are the sacred words. It's all inherent. You don't need to act it out. You don't need to, objectify and project it as a ritualize it as a ritual that you need to enact. Because it's already the case. You're already doing it. You can't not do it. You are it. So all of this complexity just collapses into just what's already happening. Just you being you. And so there's a nice freedom of spontaneity and fulfillment, fullness, because you're already doing it. This is it. This is the sacred ritual. This is the art. This is the magic. Getting up and going to the bathroom is that. Getting to your car and driving home is that. You don't need to look for specialness. This is it. This is as special as it gets. This is the real thing. This is special, but it's in capital letters and exclamation points and neon. Wake up and smell the special. Well, technically, it's quitting time because it's 9 o'clock, and I will quit because I'm tired. I'm recovering from an illness. It's been lovely to see you all. Thank you for coming out. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you. And I will be here this weekend. If some of you will be here, you'll see me, hopefully.
Absolutely.
It's my aspiration anyway. I aspire to be May the gods
Now you're doing it.